Today on Shop Nation, we put a wrap on the pantry build and turn this wire shelf nightmare into functional organizational paradise. Let's go. What's up you guys, I'm Travis, this is Shop Nation, and we're gonna jump right into it. This is part 2 of the pantry build. If you have not seen part 1, stop the video now, go watch part 1, and then come back here when you're done. But basically in part 1, we put up some shelves, built some lower carcasses, and put in a cabinet top. Now the next couple things don't necessarily have to be in order, but since we wanna use the pantry sooner rather than later, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the shelves. So that means taping and painting. Ugh. So you'll notice once again, shocker, I'm not a pro. I naturally managed to get the green paint everywhere, but it's actually okay, because to get the shelves to look like they are seamlessly built in, I had to go back and actually cut in the original wall color for a crisp, clean look. Alright, so next up is the face frame. Now I'm going to assemble the face frame as one complete part and then bring it inside and install it. You could install it piece by piece on the actual cabinet itself. That'd be another totally okay way to do it. But because my particular cabinet has some overhangs, I just think this method is going to work better. The name of the game here is to make sure that the seams are flush on the front side of the face frame. Pocket holes have a tendency to shift the wood slightly, so you got to counteract that. So next I need to break down an entire 1/2-inch plywood sheet by ripping and cross-cutting all the different parts for the drawers. And remember, I'm not using a table saw, I'm using the Craig track saw and the Craig ACS. It's totally doable. Will it take a little bit longer? Maybe, but totally doable. A smart Travis would take his other track and link it with this one so I could make a continuous 8-foot cut. But I guess lazy Travis was on duty that day. So I kind of wish I had this thought before I did all of that ripping and cross-cutting, but I don't think I want to build the drawers out of all 1/2-inch plywood. Now for shop furniture, this would work totally fine, but for indoor furniture, I do have a little guy, and solid wood will actually be a little bit stronger and also provide just a little bit more of a friendly edge for those little arms and hands. So that introduces one small problem, and that is the joinery. Now I could just use a standard butt joint like I would with plywood, but I think what I actually want to do is add a rabbet to each corner, which provides more glue up area, which I'll then reinforce with screws. So yes, that means remaking all of my drawer parts out of solid wood, premium pine in my case. Now to add those rabbets, I'm going to use this little router with a rabbeting bit. My big boy router is still in a box somewhere, so I'm stuck with this little guy. It really wasn't too bad as long as I just went slow. Now for drawer assembly. I had to make sure I actually had the rabbets fitting together in the right order. Turns out I could actually screw up my final drawer dimensions if I got that wrong, so I had to pay attention. Adding a lot of glue at each joint and then clamping them tight. And then here adding those screws at each joint for some extra strength and actually clamping. Now I'm actually not so much worried about squareness right now. The bottom will, or should, bring them all into square. Frankly, these are lazy drawers. There's 100 different ways to build drawers, but frankly, if you add a lot of screws with this design, it's gonna be plenty strong, especially considering it's holding up goldfish crackers and applesauce pouches. So with the drawers done, all that's really left is to go mount them in the cabinet and then build the drawer fronts, and then we're done. So while I'm making those drawer fronts, let's take a minute to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Craig Tool. And specifically, I want to talk to you about the Craig ACS. Now you've probably heard me talk about the ACS in the past. ACS stands for Adaptive Cutting System. And one of the most common questions I get is, can it replace a table saw? And the short answer is, yes. Now the Craig ACS represents this table you see in front of me, which is an MDF top. It's got some different tracks in it, some dog holes, and a lot of really cool features that allow you to do a lot with it. Now it's designed to be used with the Craig track or plunge saw. And I have found that in the absence of a table saw, I can do pretty much anything on this that I could with a table saw, with just a couple exceptions. But in several cases, there are things that this can do much easier than a table saw. One of those examples is cross-cutting. Cross-cutting on this thing is super easy, super fast, and super repeatable. Crosscuts on a table saw, at least the ones that most of us have in our garage, can a lot of times be kind of dangerous and cumbersome. But for me, the biggest advantage is how small and compact it is. Now you can see that I've mounted mine onto a workbench that I've built that incorporates dust collection and some storage, but the Craig stand that you could buy with the table has fold-up legs, so you can literally fold this thing up and store it in a corner. You can't really do that with a table saw. So if you have a small shop or workspace, I would highly encourage you to check out the ACS system. I personally believe that it could be a table saw replacement, but it is absolutely a great addition to a table saw as well. I'll put links down below where you can go to buy any of this stuff, as well as to the Craig Tools website, which they obviously do a lot of really cool stuff that extends well beyond the ACS system. So thank you, Craig, for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. So the drawer fronts in my case just get a decorative edge that I'm adding with the same small router with a different bit. Now you can obviously add whatever style drawer front you'd like here. Alright, so before bringing in the face frame or any of the drawers, I want to answer a couple questions that we got during part 1. Now the first question, and probably the most popular one, was why don't the cabinets extend all the way to the edges of the wall inside the pantry? And what's up with those weird spaces in the middle and on each side? Are you going to utilize them for things like spices or cutting boards or something like that? So the biggest reason that they don't extend all the way to the wall is because I'm going to be using drawers in here, not doors. And if I extended them all the way to the wall, the way that this pantry is set up, the drawers would actually hit the inside of the wall. So I have to space them off the inside of the wall enough such that the drawers will clear the door opening. That is the reason for the weird spacing. Now, a lot of good suggestions were, are you going to use that spacing for something useful? I'm not, but you totally could. It turns out we have more than enough storage in our kitchen, and really adding those little things is not really going to do a whole lot for us, but I could see in a pantry where space is at a premium, that would be a really good utilization of that space. Now, someone else asked a question and actually brought up a really good point, and that is, how did you account for the unevenness or unsquareness of walls when you're putting in things like shelves? One of the first things you'll find out when you're doing projects like this is that a lot of walls are not straight nor square. Now in my case, there was a slight bow on this back wall, but it ended up being small enough where I could just make it up with some of that caulking. But if it was significant enough where I had to trim the piece to fit the exact space, I would use a technique called scribing. And by the way, there's lots of good videos out there on how to do that. I'll try and link one of them in the description below. All right, so let's go get the face frame. We'll put it in place. You'll start to see how this is coming together. To get this thing really wrapped up, we've got to do all the finishing touches, which means paint the remaining parts, attach the drawer fronts, attach the hardware, and then we're done. Okay, home stretch. Stay with me. This is where everything really starts to look like something. For me, I made sure I painted everything with 3 coats. All right, here's a tip if you didn't already know this one. Putting in the drawer pull holes in each drawer front first helps save some serious time later. Just watch. So once I've got the drawer front positioned, I can utilize those 2 holes to temporarily clamp them in place with 2 screws. Then add some screws from inside the drawer to secure the drawer front. Remove the temporary clamping screws, then drill your drawer pull holes all the way through, and install your pulls. Boom! Mic drop. Not really, but it's pretty easy. Then you just rinse and repeat for all your different drawer fronts. Now finally adding the floor molding that I actually removed and kept from inside the pantry. And then cap it off with some 1/4 round shoe molding. Alright, so there you have it. The pantry is done. And I gotta say, I'm really happy with how it turned out. And more importantly, my wife is very happy on how it turned out. It is such a major upgrade from what this was, and although some of you may argue that I actually took away some space, you would technically be right. I would argue that it's more functional now with the drawers. And we specifically made the bottom drawers deep enough to accept these resealable tall containers that you could put things like flour and sugar in. It makes it really easy to get to and really easy to see. And then to take it a step further, we're actually gonna label the top with custom vinyl labels to tell us what exactly is in the container. So that way you can open up the drawer and see exactly what you have. Which, by the way, if you're interested in the containers, the vinyl cutter, any tools I'm using, or any supplies I'm using in this build, check the video description below and I'll try and link what I can. If you're intimidated by a DIY build such as this, don't be. All you have to do is take bite-sized chunks. This only took me about a weekend and a half and a couple weeknights in between to finish. And remember, I don't have a full shop set up. I don't even have a table saw. With some fairly basic tools, you can do this yourself. All right, that's gonna wrap up this build. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this build series, please give me a like. I appreciate it. If you feel the need to tell me how much you hate it, keep it to yourself. If you wanna be constructive, leave those in the comments down below. And finally, if you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. I tend to focus on shop content, but I throw in some of these home DIY projects every once in a while. I wanna thank Craig for sponsoring this video. I love it when natural sponsorships happen. It's not exactly a stretch for me to talk about it, and I really do believe in their products. For the subscriber update, we are currently sitting at 105,246 subscribers. Hot dang! I will see you guys on the next project, and as always, continue to pursue shop greatness.